There's a plant growing in your lawn right now that soldiers once packed into open wounds because nothing else was available. Another one was used across 3 separate continents independently for the same purpose centuries before any of those cultures had contact with each other. You have probably pulled both of them out of the roots and thrown them in a yard waste bag without a second thought. This isn't going to be a video that tells you to throw away your medicine cabinet. It's the opposite. It's a video about what happens when you take folk medicine seriously enough to actually check it, where the old stories hold up, where they don't, and where the truth sitting in your grass is stranger and more useful than the exaggerated version floating around the internet. Stick around, because the plant at the very end of this list is one that modern wound care researchers are studying again for reasons that would have made total sense to a healer working 1,000 years ago. Let's start where most people do, with the one you've definitely pulled out of a flower bed and cursed at. Dandelion is the plant everyone recognizes and almost nobody respects. Every part of it, from the yellow flower to the taproot, has a documented history of use going back through European, Chinese, and Native American herbal traditions, most often as a mild diuretic and digestive bitter. Modern research on dandelion root and leaf extracts has looked at antioxidant activity and effects on liver enzymes in small studies, and the results are promising enough that scientists keep revisiting it. But promising is the honest word. It is not a proven treatment for liver disease, and nobody should stop taking a prescribed medication because a weed in their yard has an interesting compound profile. What it is, reliably, is a genuinely edible, nutrient-dense green that people have been steaming, sautéing, and brewing into root coffee for generations. That part isn't folklore. That part is just good, free food.
Next is a plant most people know by the sting, not the name. Stinging nettle earns its reputation the moment you brush against it. Those tiny hairs inject a cocktail of histamine and formic acid that lights up your skin in seconds. But once you cook or dry it, that defense mechanism disappears, and what's left is one of the most iron and mineral-dense wild greens in the Northern Hemisphere. Traditional European herbalists used nettle tea for joint pain and allergy symptoms, and there's real clinical interest here too. A handful of studies have looked at freeze-dried nettle leaf for seasonal allergy relief with mixed but not dismissible results. It has also shown mild anti-inflammatory activity in laboratory settings. The caveat matters here. Mild anti-inflammatory activity in a petri dish is not the same as a cure, and nettle can interact with blood pressure and blood thinning medications, so if you're on either, that's a conversation for your doctor, not your search history. Now here's the one that soldiers actually did carry into battle. Broadleaf plantain, not the banana-like fruit, the low, ribbed leaf weed that grows in literally every compacted patch of soil on the planet, has one of the most consistent folk medicine records of any plant on this list.
Anglo-Saxon medical texts, Roman naturalists, and indigenous American practices all independently arrived at the same use: crush the leaf, apply it to a cut, sting, or scrape. That's not a coincidence born of magical thinking. Plantain leaves contain allantoin, a compound that genuinely does support skin healing, along with mucilage that soothes irritation on contact. This is one of the rare cases where the folklore and the chemistry line up cleanly. Plantain poultices are a legitimate low-risk first aid trick, not a replacement for stitches or antibiotics on a serious wound, but a real and useful one for minor scrapes and bug bites. If plantain is the first aid weed, chickweed is the skin-soothing one. Low, sprawling, with tiny white star-shaped flowers, chickweed has centuries of use as a poultice for itchy or irritated skin, and modern herbal medicine references still listed for that purpose. It hasn't been through rigorous clinical trials, so the honest answer is that its reputation rests almost entirely on tradition rather than lab data. But it's also almost entirely harmless. edible raw in salads, and mild enough that generations of grandmothers were comfortable rubbing it on a child's bug bite. Sometimes "we don't have a study but nobody's ever gotten hurt trying it" is just the accurate answer, and it's worth saying that plainly instead of dressing it up as proven science. Purslane is where this list takes a turn from medicine towards something almost more impressive: nutrition. This succulent little weed with fleshy reddish stems and paddle-shaped leaves has one of the highest documented plant-based omega-3 fatty acids of any leafy vegetable on Earth, more than most spinach, more than most lettuce.
Folklore. That's been measured directly in food science literature. Mediterranean and Middle Eastern cuisines have eaten purslane for thousands of years, not as medicine, but as food. And it turns out that food was quietly delivering something most Western diets are short on. Yarrow is the plant with the most dramatic backstory. According to Greek mythology, Achilles used yarrow to treat his soldiers' wounds, which is exactly why its scientific name, Achillea millefolium, carries his name to this day. That myth persisted because yarrow really was a battlefield herb across multiple cultures, valued for its use in stopping minor bleeding when applied topically. Some of its compounds have shown mild anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial activity in laboratory testing. But yarrow is also a plant to handle with real caution. It can cause skin irritation in sensitive people, it's part of the ragweed family, so it can trigger allergic reactions, and it should not be used by anyone who is pregnant. Impressive history, real caution required. Cleavers, the sticky, Velcro-like weed that clings to your socks on every walk, has a much quieter reputation, mostly as a traditional lymphatic and mild diuretic herb in Western folk medicine. There isn't strong modern clinical research behind it, and that's worth saying directly instead of dressing tradition up as proof. What is documented is that young cleavers shoots have historically been cooked and eaten like a spring green in parts of Europe, which is a modest but real use worth knowing.
Common mullein looks almost architectural with its tall flower spike and thick, fuzzy leaves, and it has one of the longest continuous records of respiratory herbal use in Western tradition, going back to ancient Greece. Herbalists have used mullein leaf tea for coughs and throat irritation for centuries, and small modern studies have looked at its mild expectorant properties. It is not a treatment for pneumonia, asthma, or any serious respiratory illness, and the fine hairs on fresh leaves need to be strained out carefully before drinking any preparation, because they can irritate the throat rather than soothe it. Red clover, that low clover with the pink-purple flower heads bees can't get enough of, carries phytoestrogen compounds called isoflavones, and this is genuinely one of the more researched plants on this list. Multiple clinical trials have examined red clover extract for menopausal symptom relief, with results that are mixed rather than conclusive. Some studies show modest benefit, others show none beyond placebo. That mixed record is the honest state of the science, and it's exactly why anyone considering it for hormonal symptoms should be doing so with a doctor's input, not a video's. Burdock root, the plant behind those famously clingy burrs that inspired the invention of Velcro, has a long culinary and medicinal history across East Asian and European traditions, where it's eaten as a root vegetable and used traditionally as a mild diuretic and skin-supporting herb. Laboratory studies have identified antioxidant compounds in burdock root, but as with so much on this list, laboratory antioxidant activity is a starting point for research, not a finished health claim.
And that's the real takeaway here. These plants aren't worthless weeds, and they're also not miracle cures. They're somewhere in between, which is where almost everything true actually lives. Some of what your grandmother believed about the plants in her yard holds up under a microscope. Some of it doesn't. The plants that survived being tested by generations of different cultures independently for the same purpose, those are usually the ones worth paying attention to. The ones with no cross-cultural record and no research behind them are usually just stories. Knowing the difference is what actually protects you.
whether that means trying a plantain poultice on a scraped knee or knowing exactly when to put the weeds down and call a doctor instead. If you learned something you didn't expect from your own backyard today, let me know in the comments which one surprised you the most. And if you want the next video to go deeper on how to actually identify these safely before you forage anything, say so below, because that's exactly where we're headed next. You're right, one static plant photo per segment doesn't match the emotional pacing of the script. Each entry in the narration actually moves through 3 to 4 emotional beats, the ordinary object, to the historical or human moment, to the science, to the practical use. Each one deserves its own visual, not just one flat botanical shot. Here's the richer version. Which brings us to the plant modern medicine is quietly circling back to. Self-heal, sometimes called heal-all, is a low purple-flowered weed found in lawns worldwide. And its name isn't marketing. It's been used across Chinese, European, and Native American herbal traditions for wound care and sore throats, independently, long before any of those cultures had contact with each other. That's the kind of cross-cultural agreement that makes researchers take a second look, and they have. Laboratory studies have found that compounds in self-heal show antiviral and antioxidant activity, enough that it remains an active subject of pharmacological research today. It is not an approved treatment for any viral illness, and nobody should mistake early lab research for a cure. But this is a case where ancient wisdom and current scientific curiosity are pointing in the same direction at the same time, which is rarer than the internet makes it sound. So here's the contradiction sitting underneath everything we just covered. The popular version of this topic, the one that says a weed in your yard is stronger than antibiotics or a secret cure Big Pharma doesn't want you to find, isn't just exaggerated, it's backwards. The real story isn't that these plants are secretly more powerful than modern medicine. It's that modern medicine and traditional plant knowledge aren't actually enemies. Plantain's allantoin genuinely supports skin healing. Purslane's genuinely has remarkable omega-3 content. Self-Heal genuinely has researchers interested in its antiviral compounds. None of that needed a conspiracy to be true. It just needed someone to actually check.